Coming up on today's show, Elon Musk lets us know a little more about what the Tesla Model 3 will and won't have as standard. Volkswagen gets approval to sell some of its Dieselgate cars, but Europeans moan about their poor performance after a fix has been applied. And Renault begins offering 41 kilowatt-hour battery pack upgrades for existing Renault ZOE customers. These stories and more coming up next on 10. Like all our content, today's show is funded by the in-stream ads on today's video and by the kind donations of viewers like you. Follow the link at the end of today's video to make a monthly donation to our Patreon crowdfunding campaign to help keep us independent and impartial. And if you're already donating, thanks for your continued support. It's Friday, March 31st, 2017. I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield and this is 10, the news show that you might just think is about electric cars, but is more than happy to cover everything from reusable rockets to autonomous cars, hydrogen fuel cell cars, and yes, even human power. Today's show starts with some much needed updates on the Tesla Model 3 electric car from Tesla CEO Elon Musk, who took to Twitter late last week to confirm a few things about Model 3 that we didn't know before. First, Model 3 won't get a head-up display or a traditional speedometer arrangement. Instead, since Model 3 is built from the ground up with autonomous driving in mind, and the onboard system will worry about speed limits and the like, it will only have that large 15-inch landscape monitor arrangement we saw in the Alpha prototype this time last year. Second, those wanting for a right-hand drive Model 3, an all-wheel drive Model 3 or a performance Model 3 will find themselves waiting until sometime next year, with only rear-wheel drive, left-hand drive Model 3 being produced at launch. Other models will follow, as will battery pack capacities, which Musk said for now will be no larger than 75 kilowatt hours. Sorry. While Tesla is busying itself with Model 3 preparation, Hyundai and its sister company Kia announced this week that they intend to push forward with the development of a brand new vehicle platform designed exclusively for electric vehicles. The reason? Hyundai and Kia need to play catch-up with Tesla, GM and Nissan, all of which have longer-range mass-market models on the market next year. And while that platform won't be ready for market for a few years, both companies are working hard to bring an all-electric SUV to market next year. But that vehicle is unlikely to have the 200 to 300 mile 320 to 500 kilometre range that both automakers need in order to be able to compete in the EV marketplace. And given that the Hyundai Ioniq isn't selling in the kind of volumes Hyundai had hoped, and reviewers are unimpressed with the Kia Niro, time's running out for both brands, especially when hydrogen fuel cell tech isn't where both companies had thought it would be. Watch this space. From one automaker struggling to play catch-up now to an automaker determined to ensure that it's not last to the party. That automaker is Daimler, which announced this week that it intends to shovel an extra 10 billion euro, that's $10.8 billion US dollars, into developing 10 new electric vehicles that will be released to market by 2022. That's 3 years earlier than the target date set by the company back in September at the Paris Motor Show, and shows just how much of a disruption Tesla is making to the automotive industry, and just how worried traditional automakers are by its assault on both the luxury car segment and soon the mass market segment. This commitment comes at a time when Daimler, like most other car makers, is facing at least some investigations into diesel emissions and as a consequence is quite keen to distance itself from the quite obviously dying internal combustion engine. Will 10 billion euro be enough to push it into the world of electric vehicles once and for all? Well, that's going to be something we've got 5 years to find out. Finishing our trio of stories about automakers playing catch-up, we're off to Germany now, where Audi is facing pressure from its unionised workforce to bring production of its planned Audi Quattro E-Tron SUV to its main production facility in Ingolstadt. Audi, which has planned to build its first all-electric model at its Brussels plant, is being asked by unions to bring its electric vehicles to its main production facility, as not doing so could prevent those workers from gaining the valuable experience they need to ensure job security. And with Audi facing the same kind of probes as the rest of the mainstream auto industry, it's clear that electric vehicle advocates have allies in the form of union workers who are just as keen to do away with those noisy, smelly engines of the past and focus on batteries, motors, and cleaner, greener rides. Moving from Audi now to Volkswagen, which has received permission from the US EPA to begin selling the remaining 2015 model year TDI cars that were left sitting on dealer lots when the Dieselgate scandal broke in late 2015. There's about 12,000 cars in total across the US that fall into this category. But while approval has been given for these cars to be sold unmodified, just as they were back in 2015, part of the agreement stipulates that they must then be brought back to the dealer at some point in the future, most likely a few years' time, when Volkswagen has finally figured out a hardware fix that brings those cars in line with emissions regulations. And that's crazy, because if reports from Europe are correct, cars over there which have received software and hardware fixes to bring them in line with European emissions regulations are now reportedly terrible to drive, randomly stalling and continuously entering into filter cleaning mode and generally not making their owners happy. I'm not sure if the approval from the EPA to sell these 12,000 cars has anything to do with the new US administration, but honestly, this can only end in pain for all concerned. Come on, Volkswagen, take it on the chin, forget about them, and make some new cars. Staying on the subject of environmental concerns this week, as I'm sure you might be aware, saw the issuing of an executive order from President Trump which rolled back regulation intended to protect the environment, restrict damage caused by fossil fuel extraction, and encourage a society powered by renewable energy. If we ignore some of the claims made by the president during the signing of this executive order about jobs and the economy, because automation will kill a lot of the jobs the administration is claiming it will save, this measure is being called the most dangerous move by the president yet. But while Mr. Trump claimed to be handing power back to the states and the people who know best, one state, California, is determined to continue as it was, with the California Air Resource Board resolute on its air pollution reduction targets, its emissions regulations, and its zero-emission vehicle mandates, with a reaffirming vote this week to lock in statewide emission standards, as set by President Obama and the EPA, for vehicles made between 2022 and 2025. Admittedly, while the auto industry is fighting for rollback of EPA standards and seems to be backed by President Trump, it seems that it won't get its way for now in California. And since California buys about 1/3 of all new cars sold in the US today, this affirmation cannot be understated. Yes, it's going to be a rocky road, but at least one state is willing to stick its neck out and stand against something that overwhelming scientific consensus has shown us is a really bad idea. When it comes to its history with electric vehicles, Toyota has been something of a skeptic. Sure, we had the amazing original RAV4 EV, an example of which I happen to own, but since then Toyota has been squarely in the hybrid and hydrogen fuel cell camp, complaining bitterly about battery range, longevity of EVs, and only making electric cars when it really had no other choice. But this week, Toyota announced it is moving towards electric vehicles by using artificial intelligence at its Silicon Valley Toyota Research Institute to design next-generation electric car battery packs that it claims will help accelerate its electric vehicle development. It's something that Toyota has discussed before, using AI to help research new battery materials. But with electric cars well and truly starting to gain market share, Toyota is plowing an extra $35 million into the project, which, yes, also includes more hydrogen fuel cell research. Kind of predictable, that last bit. For as long as the Tesla Model S and Tesla Model X have been in production, people around the world have opted to buy them or lease them as company cars, either thanks to forward-thinking company policies or some clever accounting. After all, with no tailpipe emissions to worry about, something which affects company car taxes in many countries, and low running costs, a zero-emission Tesla makes perfect sense. But this week, Tesla made that association official by launching a brand new corporate sales website, promoting the benefits of owning an electric car and the benefits to businesses for making their fleets all electric. Tesla isn't looking like it will offer massive discounts for corporate customers as other car companies do, but it is happy to waive the $2,500 or equivalent discount that is normally required for retail sales. To be honest though, it's a win-win for both sides. A Tesla Model S or Model X is cheaper to run than a conventional car, and Tesla gains from the extra sales. What's not to love? There was a time not so long ago when driving was considered something of a pursuit of the rich. Indeed, it wasn't until the 1950s really that car ownership really became something that regular folks could afford. These days, we don't think twice about owning and driving a car, but in the not too distant future, warns Gus Park of Direct Line Insurance in the UK, driving could soon become a luxury pursuit again, with insurance companies favouring autonomous vehicles so much that insurance for those who don't have autonomous vehicles will become prohibitively expensive. And that means, especially in mixed traffic, that owning a self-driving car will become the norm, and the only ones who can afford to drive a car that they physically control will be those who can afford to pay the ever-increasing premiums. As a classic car fan, that's something that actually scares me a little, but I'd like to know what you think about it in the comments below. A car that's one you certainly have to drive is the current and previous generation Renault ZOE, which, along with the rest of the Renault ZE family of electric vehicles, has helped Renault lease a total of 100,000 battery packs so far. The milestone, announced this week, goes hand in hand with the announcement that Renault will now let owners of the original ZOE EV, which had a 22 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery pack, upgrade their car's leased battery pack to the latest generation 41 kilowatt-hour version, almost doubling the car's range without requiring you to buy a new vehicle. Fantastic! It's something that's super rare in the electric vehicle world, but at the same time something that I'd love to see more car companies offer moving forward, because it's more sustainable. And if you want to know more about details of this announcement, be sure to stick around after the show to watch the vlog I made about it this week. And finally, here at Transport Evolved, I cover the latest in the world of cleaner, greener, safer and smarter transportation. And while right now that mainly revolves around plug-in cars, occasionally I do get something to cover that's completely out of this world. Literally. Like the Falcon 9 rocket SpaceX used yesterday to send a brand new communication satellite into space. You see, traditionally, first-stage rockets are used just once, falling back to Earth and crashing in the ocean after accelerating whatever it is they're carrying to the edge of space. But SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, which can gently fly back down to Earth and land itself on a robotic drone platform at sea, can be reused time and time again. And yesterday's launch was the first time we've seen a rocket reused a second time, landing just 10 minutes after launching some 20 kilometers into space. Not only does this /space program launch cost by millions of dollars, but it's also far more sustainable than previous launch vehicle designs. Congratulations to SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, the rest of the SpaceX team, and to SES, the communications company based out of Luxembourg, which was the first client to make use of this fantastic piece of technology. Sure, it's not completely zero emission, but without Apex Orbital and its CEO Space Girl, it's really the best you can do for now. So yay rah! And on that note, it's time for me to say goodbye again for the week. As always, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Visit transportevolved.com for more cleaner, greener, safer and smarter transportation news, or join in the conversation on Twitter at transportevolved. And if you liked what you saw today and you want to help us make more shows like this, please consider making a donation to the Patreon crowdfunding campaign for Transport Evolved. There's a link in the description below and at the end of today's show, at the video at the end. Thanks again for joining me. I'll see you next week. I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield. That was T.E.N. Have a great weekend, and until next time, keep evolving.